Good afternoon. You're listening to Local Media This Week here on Scariff Bay Community Radio, and you're very, very welcome this Sunday afternoon. My name is Jim Collins, and I'm joined here by most of our regular panel. So we have John S. Kelly. John, good afternoon.
Afternoon, Jim.
And Pat O'Brien. Pat, you're welcome again.
Thanks, Jim.
And we have, standing in for David, we have Luke Fleming. Luke, you're welcome.
Hi, Jim. How are you?
And today we have a guest. We've had him before, but a very special guest to join us here on Local Media This Week. And that is from the Clare Echo, Paraic McMahon. Paraic, you are very, very welcome to East Clare again.
Good afternoon, Jim. Thanks very much for having me.
Great stuff. Well, our job here, I suppose, is to look at the local print media and, just have a chat about it, see what's being covered, what's being featured, and maybe give our own take on it. And we don't always agree with each other. So John S. Can be quite contrary at times. And
it depends on the day, Jim.
Anyway, looking at the at both papers, there is both the Clare Echo and the Clare Champion. Looking at they cover a story here. Mother learned of daughter's death over Facebook, and I suppose since the story on the Clare Echo is written by Paraic, we'll maybe turn to him first. And I understand you've been covering this story for a while, Paraic.
Yeah, no, it's been something I've been working away on for a month, where Mary O'Shea made contact with us in the office, and she said she wanted us to run the story and to highlight it. So she's basically trying to seek changes to next of kin policy, which is in place across hospitals across Ireland. So tragically her daughter Aisling died in December of last year. She had kidney problems for a long while, and she was admitted to hospital after having a fall. When she returned to work last September, she was a very popular worker in Killaloe Super Value. And while she was in hospital, she unfortunately contracted COVID-19. And that, along with her other conflicting health issues, unfortunately resulted in her death last December. And Mary had been split from Aisling's father originally, so she wasn't listed as next of kin, and she would have found it almost impossible to get information from the hospital. Anytime she'd rang them for updates, they couldn't go. They were only, and of course the hospital were only doing their job. They were following the policies in place. And ultimately it got that Aisling's conditions deteriorated. Mary was given no proper updates or information, and it then transpired in December of last year that an ex-co-worker of Mary sent her a message on Facebook to sympathise with her on the death of her daughter. And then it took 15 hours between Mary making contact with the hospital for them to actually confirm that Aisling had died, which was pretty unimaginable pain anyway. Yes. For a parent to lose a child, but that tragedy and trauma that Mary went through was very difficult. And approaching Aisling's first anniversary, she came to us to try highlight the story to see could it bring about change in how next of kin policy is, which is very difficult in a scenario like that where families are slightly estranged for updates to be given. And unfortunately for Mary, it was kind of an example of that.
Yes, and I suppose given that what the policy is, presumably there is a next of kin, and that next of kin is the one that they contact, and everybody else is outside that, irrespective of what type of relative they are.
Exactly, that's the way it was. And also it came at a time where we had COVID-19 restrictions, so there was no visitors even allowed in, and Aisling was in ICU for a time as well. And it was before she went to ICU, she was in contact with Mary, and then she told her, I'm going to ICU, I'm going to have to turn off my phone, my condition is getting worse. And Mary knew at that stage that was the last time she was going to talk to her daughter.
Yes.
Which is pretty tragic as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely dreadful. And to hear the news then like that is pretty awful.
What's the reason, do you think, Paraic, for this policy?
I wouldn't have the exact explanation for it now, but then the matter was raised by Cathal Crowe in the Dáil in a parliamentary question, and in response the HSE said back that the use of the word next of kin can actually be misleading. So the whole thing of a policy is very vague around it. Like you couldn't be critical of University Hospital Limerick, I would say, in this scenario, because the nurses and everyone there was only doing their job. They were just following the letter of the law which was in place. Now Mary has sought for a review to take place. She initially contacted the hospital in April, at the start of April 2021, looking for that review to begin. She got correspondence in May saying an acknowledgement, but there was delay after delay with that. And then in August, they acknowledged a number of things, and the review is ongoing. And I think she's going to seek maybe a further investigation into the review that they've carried out.
And I think she is meeting the minister in Dublin, I gather,
there's
the next week.
There's talk that Deputy Crowe is going to organise a meeting with Minister Donnelly and possibly the Taoiseach, but the Taoiseach was supposed to come down to County Clare to launch the Ennis 2040 strategy in January and wasn't able to come, so I kind of believe that meeting is going to happen when you see it.
It's a sad story. It's an important story because it raises, as you say, a very significant issue in relation to connection. But I don't know what the answer is.
I would think a very simple solution to it, John, and if it's something, it obviously needs to be looked at countrywide. I presume it's not just an issue that could come to Limerick, but if you use the word, we'll say, next of kin, the other word I would use for it is parents. And you know, most have two. Mm-hmm. And I cannot understand how the mother of or a father of a child cannot get information if their son or daughter is in hospital.
Well, I agree with you, Luke. Yeah.
But that's the solution to it. You know, I said, families can break up, relationships break up, but at the end of the day, flesh and blood is flesh and blood. And it's not as if Aisling wasn't in touch with her mother or anything like that. She was. And I said, I just know, I didn't know her very well, but I knew her from working in SuperValu in Killoo, and she was a lovely lady. Mm-hmm. And I said, may she rest in peace. But I would think the solution to it is basically that if they have to come up with legislation or change the wording next of kin to sort of just put it, parents, with an S at the end of it.
Yes, so that you have two, or at least if two are alive, that they both have equal access to information.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
There's distressing to think that it was 15 hours, the girl was dead 15 hours before the mother knew about it,
That's extraordinary.
Common sense should come in somewhere.
It should, yeah. Common sense is often lacking in a lot of those places too.
I mean, from one sad story, we move on to something maybe more light-hearted. I know Janice raised his eyebrows when he saw this one about the Ennis Musical Society. And there are all sorts of problems for musical societies and anybody putting on shows, John, but the Ennis Musical Society have a rather unique problem.
Well, the interesting thing about the Ennis situation is that the Musical Society are stepping in to take the place of the Lisdoonvarna Festival because they have a cry out now for men. Now, I notice you down there at the end of the table, Jim, beginning to react. Would you fit the bill there?
I'm taken, I'm afraid, John.
Yeah. They're in rehearsal for the musical Legally Blonde. Obviously, it's heavily weighted towards the female, but they do need some men. And the reality is, the men are slow in coming. So they put out a good article. And let me tell you what they say. We need men. That's the message from the Ennis Musical Society, which has put out a desperate plea for men of the County Clare to get involved in their upcoming show, Legally Blonde.
Yes.
Now, and if taking part in fun show isn't enough, the chairperson, Rachel Culligan, reveals that the society is the ideal place, Pat, to be for those looking for love. How about that? The Ennis Musical Society is holding auditions for the show, and Rachel is urging men to put themselves forward. Would we give support to that now?
Well, have we enough? Could we spare any men from the radio to?
Well, look at with 5 of us around the table here. Are we on offer?
I don't know. Would our voices be good enough, John?
No, there are some non-speaking parts in them. But I thought it was a very catchy heading. Ennis Music Society, desperate for men.
Well, there's a quotation, and I can't for the life of me think off the top of my head as to attribute the quotation, but a quotation being that a woman without a man is like a fish without a bicycle.
Good.
So,
God, yeah.
I think that there's another variation of that one as well, Jim.
What is it, Luke?
Maybe after the watershed.
I think so. Yeah. I'd say off air, John. I think before we get in trouble.
Rachel Culligan's here. She's as John said there. She's the chairperson. She describes the group as almost a Tinder of Innis.
Yeah.
Many couples meeting and falling in love after joining. It's kind of a wonderful dating service. I would say she loves. So they're holding auditions anyway if anyone and starting in January. And she's urging anybody that want to go along and join up.
Do you know what I'd suggest, Pat? That she'd hold auditions in East Clare, like take the Mills.
Yeah.
You have a weighted bachelor, over there. Okay, if she went on tour throughout our region here of East Clare, she'd get the men.
Oh, she would, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Some of us are old enough, Paraic, to remember the Kilkishen Marquee. No, you're not, but Pat and I would often have gone there. At least Pat and I.
Yeah.
I think though if Rachel is doing a tour of East Clare, she should bring over John S., who appears to be putting his hand up as East Clare's answer to Willie Daly. Maybe.
Okay, we'll move on.
Yeah.
I suppose, Paraic, for this time of year, in the lead up to Christmas, it's probably a very busy time for a weekly newspaper.
Yeah.
Given that there are some, particularly this year, maybe because businesses want to do the best they can at Christmas, given that the year has been so patchy.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and you can see it in both papers. There's a lot of advertisement from people. We're in Black Friday now, so a lot of people looking to maybe get a bargain if they can. And one point that was kind of put forward, I was just reading it online from Councillor Mary Howard, was just, the big companies that we're shopping with online, they're not sponsoring the local hurling team or funding the local drama club. So this is really, we say Black Friday, but maybe it should be Green Friday is what they're saying, and support the Irish businesses in a way. And, because ultimately they're the ones that are giving the local jobs and giving the funding to local communities and groups. So I suppose that'd be something. I know the people of Scariff, their listeners of Scariff Bay are very good to support local as well. So, at this time of year where we can, I think if the Christmas presents are to be got, if they can be got locally, it'd be brilliant.
Yes, yeah.
Throw into that one, because it's a recurring issue. Buy local, buy Irish, isn't it? But there's one stands out in my mind, and that is the closure of post offices. All right, and I'm hearing that the post offices are willing to take on agency work from the government. That there are different types of sub-agencies that the government serves, that could be done in the post office. And our argument is that we need to wake up to the reality that trying to save our post office after it is closed is too late. We save it by doing local, by encouraging our politicians to get interested in what it is that's required to save the post offices. And it is more hands-on work from the state. And otherwise, you'll have a repeat of the Broadford situation and of the other situations around the countryside. Another village losing out. Yeah. So, in fair play to the Clare Champion, they have a good editorial, and you're working on one, Paraic, for next week, I heard.
Well, I think Paraic has a look for local feature.
The Click for Clare partnership between the Clare Local Enterprise Office and the Clare Echo is back. Running again, which has...
How does that work?
It's almost like a directory of sorts that it'll have all the businesses, County Clare businesses that you can purchase online from, and it links to them. We'll say if Jim Collins had a shop, there'll be a link to Jim's shop, and you'd get in on the website to his online shop straight away. So it's all online, any Clare business that is online, and the majority of them have been funded by Clare Local Enterprise Office to go online over the last 2 years. The Clare LEO have had more trading online vouchers issues than they have in their whole lifetime, which is very interesting because businesses are moving to online. As we can see, COVID-19 has probably accelerated it more so, which does have concerns in terms of the physical shops. Will they continue to have their stores if they can do it online? So there are a lot of questions that haven't yet been answered, but the Click for Clare initiative is back and running again, and it's a partnership we're delighted to have with Clare LEO.
I know.
Well,
I think I should just interrupt there a little bit, because I said while I went over to the shop today and the current issue of the paper wasn't in, I went online and I was quite happy to see, Paraic, I don't know whether you had editorial content over this, but the venues being covered in it were from Toongraney.
I can't take the credit for that.
Exactly. So well timed. Well timed.
John, you're not in the market for a new mattress now. You can get 50% off.
No, wrong time of year.
Yeah, there's a Black Friday sale here, 50% off all mattresses from Home Trends Furniture in Pernilla Street in Innes. So,
Oh, very good. Pat, what's the origin of the Friday, Black Friday?
it's an American. It's the day after Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving, yeah.
They have this big sale in the States, and it's supposed to come in here then as well.
And they call it Black.
Yeah, they call it Black Friday. Yeah. And it's a sales day really. I think they're all off. Today's a bank holiday in the States.
That's
I think the
right.
day after
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, and I suppose they're all out. And I suppose when it starts in America, they usually.
It used to be for
That's
retail.
fine.
It used to be for retail that basically people use queue up. It would be like the sort of Christmas sales here that people use queue up outside the shops. Now the majority of it is online, and like everything else in the world, sort of what starts off as a day event now probably turns into 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah.
But we'll say you have Black Friday, and then they have what they'll call Cyber Monday. So that's on Monday. You know, and it was a bit like, well, if you didn't get to the shops on Friday, you could go and shop online on Monday. You know, but it's
Cyber Monday.
Cyber Monday, yeah, it's just.
Yes, and that's kind of suggests an online.
Oh, totally,
Yeah.
yeah, totally.
But I see a lot of shops in Clare, and maybe not shops that I would frequent now, but fashion shops would have a Facebook presence and would have kind of an online, almost an online store in Facebook, that if you go to their Facebook page and scroll down along, you get all the various offers that they have, So it is definitely moving that way that Paraic was suggesting there, that it's more and more online, or online to complement the we'll say block work,
Yeah.
the actual building where the shop is situated.
Yeah. By the way, Pat referred to a holiday, the day after Thanksgiving is a holiday. Reminds me, would you like an extra holiday in the year?
Oh, Jesus, John, will you give it a break? do you know the latest nonsense I heard yesterday? That we're going to have Paddy's Day as a holiday and the 18th for next year. So if you didn't get drunk enough the first night, you can come back and make a proper job of it the second day.
Why do you not lean towards an extra holiday?
Humbug, John.
Humbug.
Humbug.
Oh my God! Would you agree with that, humbug?
Well, as someone who's retired, it doesn't affect me hugely. You were going to say permanently on holiday, but
it's a live issue. It's in the conversation. It's going to happen in some way or another.
Yeah,
They're talking about moving it to St. Bridget's Day,
St. Bridget's
which
Day,
will be
yeah.
the 1st of February.
Yeah.
That's right.
There was a big gap between Patrick's Day and Christmas, and the Brazil Day.
And how do you feel yourself?
But I don't mind John one way or the other.
Yeah.
Trying to make any difference to me.
We leave the last word to you on that one, Paraic.
I'll take it if it's going, but I'd be a bit worried, as Luke said, of the 17th and 18th, if lads and ladies are going to be drinking the St. Patrick's Day and the day after, sure they're going to need a third day to recover then. So, that'd be a slight.
Probably would.
I don't know when they're going to do it. I know Kildare Senator Fiona Loughlin came out this week and said there should be the holiday should be for the Taoiseach. So that was a small bit of a surprise, given Kildare's links to St. Bridget, that Fiona didn't row in behind that. I think you're right, it's going to happen, but I don't know who should have the say on who does.
Obviously, Luke won't have a say in it anyway.
No, just as well, John.
Okay, we'll move on again. Looking at Shell and the, I think it's on the Clare Champion. I'm not sure if it's...
Geez, we have a guest here who has written exclusively about it as well. It is in the
Yes.
It's covered in both papers. But I said I will have to compliment Paraic in relation to it, because we say, Paraic, you have a lot of detail that isn't necessarily in, we'll say, some of the bits that's in the article in the Champion. So it's basically, we blow a lot of hot air here, but we're very much in favour of
29.
We're very much in favour of offshore wind.
29.
Yeah, now I had the online one here in front of me, and is basically Simply Blue, who are a company based in Cork, and Shell, they've taken Shell on board basically, I presume, to finance it, I would imagine, the things. And we're talking about offshore and long distance offshore, 35 kilometres offshore. And the detail that you have just in yours, some of it I found very interesting, that you're saying you're talking, the turbines will be between 15 to 18 megawatts each. Now, John, this would apply back to you. You're trying to get a grasp of things. Back in, we say, within the last 10, 15 years, for onshore turbines that would have been built. So, there's a lot of them up around, they're looking
East
to put
Coast.
a few, yeah. Well, no, in Clare, around Ina and stuff like that.
On land, oh yeah.
Yeah, we'd say on land. A lot of those are maybe 1 or 2 megawatts each, right? You're talking 7 to 8 times the capacity for one turbine. Now, part of the reason why that is possible is because of the physical size of them and the height of them. But they're going to be 35 kilometres offshore, so I don't think there's going to be too many people looking at them. So, Paraic, tell us about it.
Yeah, well, just one slight concern with it is that obviously Simply Blue, as you said, the project office for this project, it's, as we say, 35 kilometres off the coast quay. The project office is going to be based in Cork for the duration of the works, which is something you'd love to see, the project office maybe in West Clare, and have a team of workers working out of there and more jobs for the county. But I think there is, as you said, Luke, there is massive potential for offshore wind energy in County Clare. I'm aware that Limerick City and County Council are also keen to harness it, and there's maybe potential down the line, from what I'm gathering, that there is going to be almost wind turbine wars in terms of the cost of generating them is going to be cheaper in Limerick than it is in Clare, so it's going to be something that's going to be progressing over the next while. But as Cillian Murphy says here, the potential for West Clare, and he said offshore wind is the Klondike of the modern energy era, and it does come as a bit of a boost considering the uncertainty that there is with Equinor pulling out the Irish market, and where does that leave the Money Point project, Green Atlantic?
Would I be right, Paraic, in saying that the fact that these are going to be further offshore doesn't mean that the foreshore licence issues are going to be as problematic?
Yeah, I suspect you'd be right from what I can gather as well. That'd be the case. But initially when this came in, I got onto both companies involved just to make sure it was completely separate to ESB Money Point, because that has gone quiet at the minute, which is something that maybe should be ringing alarm bells. We're not maybe hearing as much noise from our Oireachtas members on that. But there is massive capacity for offshore wind energy. West Clare seems to be getting a lot of it. I wonder, is there a demand in East Clare for if something could be put together on Lough or something? What would we be thinking?
I don't think they'd like one on Holy Island. No, no. I don't think the council would like one out there now, considering hopefully they're going to put a few bob into it at some stage. But no, but the offshore, we'll say the country, we're well geared up for it. The fact that you have, we said Money Point in its heyday could produce 26-27% of the electricity for the country. The infrastructure is there. It's literally just to run the cables from the sea back into Money Point. You're not going to have to, go build a truckload of new infrastructure on land to do it.
Look,
you have an actual deep water port there as well.
Yeah, but we have learned, at least we should have learned, or should be learning, from the experience of dealing with the ESB and its suggested partner, which fell apart last week. Okay, to allow that to happen as citizens of the state is a bit of an error, but to allow it to repeat in the second one, it's, how would you describe it? Crass dereliction, isn't it? Really? So I mean, it's interesting that Shell, a company we associate with petrol and gas, are into. I didn't realise until I read the article, Paraic's article, that Shell have been in the wind energy sea location for some time. So it's not new. It was inevitable that the oil companies were going to show interest in wind energy and the location, like we'll call it the loop head. Okay, we've got to do everything in our power to encourage our politicians to become active, very, very active in the promotion of wind energy offshore. And the thing about, just to finish up for myself, Pat, the thing about the 35 kilometre, the curvature is there on the ocean, so the farther out you go, the less visible it becomes. Okay, so there isn't won't be a problem of visual from the point of view of the environment
planning.
Visual impact.
What?
Visual impact.
Eamon Ryan was on After the News, that program, Prime Time, is it? After the News, there one night, and he was when this other crowd pulled out with DSB, and he said, there'll be no problem. There'll be plenty of companies to come in to do it, and then Mary McCann asked him about. He said, we'll be doing the East Coast first, and we'll do the West Coast in 10 years' time, and we'll be plenty dirty before we get to the West Coast. Mm-hmm. That was his answer.
Yeah.
Am I right in thinking, Paraic, that the company Equinor that left the scene there a few weeks ago, that the reason was planning or lack of a structure,
regulatory framework? Yeah,
okay.
That was their concern.
So is that part of the reason why this seems to be flying? Is that there isn't that?
Simply Blue have done something similar down in Cork, or have announced plans to do something similar in Cork. So that seems to be the tactic that they are going with, and there probably, as you'd suggest, wouldn't seem to be as much of a hold up with that. But Equinor had raised concerns for a while with regards to the pace at which things would move.
Yes, yeah.
And are we trying to improve on that?
You'd hope
I mean,
so.
seriously now, I mean, talking about rural revitalisation and all that kind of thing, when you have something being handed to you on a plate and don't protect it.
But nothing's happened since 2005 or something, John. There was a legislation passed in 2005 or 2004 or sometime that time for wind farms off the coast, and it never has been updated.
So what are we saying to Timmy Dooley,
Cathal
Crowe,
Michael McNamara,
yeah,
And Violet Ann.
Violet Ann. What is the message going out?
Joe Carey.
And Joe Carey.
Martin Conway and Roisin Garvey.
What are we saying to them?
Yes, I presume we're saying, lads, what's going on? Whose responsibility is it to put those regulatory structures in place? Whose job is it? Is it? I mean, at the end of the day, it's the politicians' job because
Dáil's job.
They're elected. Yeah. But I mean, presumably the actual work that goes into it is the civil servants will do a lot of it.
And tell us.
And yes, and let us know what is going on here and how long more have we to wait as a country before we can get our house in order so that we take on the future in terms of energy generation.
Sorry, Pat, go on.
There last week they were talking about the things on the roofs of the houses, the
solar
panels. Out in Germany and in France and all the farms, they have loads of those solar panels, and we have nothing here. So if you travel from here to Dublin, you wouldn't see a solar panel on a farm.
In fairness, I have a feeling that that's going to change this coming year, because the surplus will be paid. The farmer will be actually get paid for the surplus. Not very much, I must say, but from January onwards, that's
John, I will ask you which January.
Yeah.
No,
no, I'm 100% serious, because it's a topic I know a little bit about, and it was supposed to come in, we'll say, in the tail end of 2019, and I sort of wonder, what do Equinor and this whole thing have in common? ESB.
I'd
just leave it there. And monopolies in this country.
Yeah.
We're going to leave it now, but I will challenge you. Fiver, and it can be witnessed by my three other colleagues here around the table. €5, okay, that you will get paid for surplus energy produced this coming year, not this.
You said January, John.
The minister said
And
January.
I asked you which January.
Well, the minister, no, there was a cynical undertone to it. So, you're right.
Oh, correct.
No. So are you taking up the challenge?
Absolutely. If you want, I'll double it.
No. As a retiree, I would be able to afford.
Go to an area that John is causing him worry,
What is it?
and that is seed potatoes.
Oh, my God.
You have a major problem with seed potatoes.
Well, I was thinking of you. I know you're a gardener. Okay? I know Pat is a gardener. And you grow your own earlies, particularly earlies every year. And I do. These potatoes, the seed potatoes, as you know, predominantly come from Scotland. There's a small amount down from Donegal. But the seed potatoes that supplies the Irish market come from Donegal. From eastern Scotland. As a result of Brexit, seed potatoes from Britain may not be imported in here. Okay? Now, that hasn't hit the fan yet, but the impact it will have. So the alternative then, or the option we'd have, would be potatoes from Europe. Brands we know nothing about, do you know? Perhaps grossly unsuitable to the actual Irish conditions, all right? So there was an article on one of the dailies last week dealing with this, and it was the supplier, the biggest supplier from Scotland, pointing out the dilemma that he is in.
Yes,
okay?
Major problem for him as well.
And one for us. So if you see a notice outside any of the horticultural shops in the East Clare area with Kerpings, Golden Wonders, British Queens records for sale, buy the seed now.
Yes, okay, and store it over the winter.
But
John, when you're digging out your potatoes, you should keep the seed ones for the following year.
Do you do that?
I have done it different
Have
times.
you?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, very fair play to you.
Okay, listen, we've reached the halfway point. So at this stage, usually we ask Pat, our resident DJ, to suggest a little bit of music.
There's only one singer that...
Oh, God, that's what we were afraid of.
been talked about all week, and that's Gareth Brooks. So if tomorrow never comes...
Okay, Gareth Brooks. 5 nights sold out next September.
Next September, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Pat.
If tomorrow never comes, will she know how much I love her? Did I try in every way to show her every day that she's my only one? And if my time on earth were through, she must face this world without me. Is the love I gave her in the past gonna be enough to last if tomorrow never comes? So tell that someone that you love just what you're thinking of if tomorrow never comes.
You're very welcome back. You're listening to Local Media this week here on Scariff Bay Community Radio. That was Garth Brooks. And good luck with the hunt for tickets for Garth's 5 concerts next year. I know Pat is sorted anyway, so hopefully the rest of us will pick up some along the way. Can I remind you as well, we're talking to you on Sunday the 28th of November. We have a calendar, 2022 calendar, available for sale to the general public. And absolutely, if I may say so myself, an absolutely fantastic looking calendar, absolutely brilliant. Beautiful photographs from Ruth Griffin. Photographs taken all over East Clare. And I think every parish is included in it. And there's photographs of various people in the radio station as well, but they're quite small. You won't. But we're looking at these are for sale anyway. They'll be sale in various outlets and from volunteers here at the station as well. We're talking about €5, and it's an absolutely fantastic calendar for €5. So you might, if you see it around, you might pick one up. Look, it is nice, John, isn't it?
Lovely.
Yeah.
An artistic point of view, from a functional point of view,
Yes.
and for a fundraising point of view, it scores very highly.
They're available, as I said, for €5. An ideal Christmas present or New Year present or something to send away to remind people that maybe of what they're missing here in East Clare and the most beautiful scenery, and not to speak of the people.
It's the people away over Christmas and all that, it'd be nice to send them a calendar. So we urge people to go out and support the radio station.
Okay.
You're supporting the radio station as well, so it's a nice production.
Buy local, as they say.
Yeah.
It is very local. I mean, all the areas are local. It was printed locally and put together locally, so it's a complete local. There's nothing from outside of County Clare in it.
And we would like to, as well, Jim, to thank all the sponsors. I think the sponsors were our main way of collecting money, maybe to produce it. So we'd just like to we'd ask everybody in East Clare to support the sponsors as well.
Yes, we have on each. We have a number of advertisements on. I think there's 2 on each month. And we reiterate that to please support our sponsors and our advertisers. Okay, now that being said, just normally in the second half of the programme we look sort of more local to East Clare, but since we have Paraic today, we'll make an exception to that. One of the things we had down for the first half of the show, which we never got to, was Shannon. Paraic, you have a headline there. Yeah, council refused 10 million gift to fund community space. On the face of it, that would seem to be extraordinary, but I suppose there's probably more to it.
Oh, there's definitely more to it, and the story is covered by Owen Ryan as well in the Clare Champion on page 1 and page 3, and we have it on page 12 and page 14. So there was a meeting of the Love Shannon Community Council last Wednesday night, and I just thought the comments were relevant just because I was listening to you last week, and I know John S. Kelly expressed that satisfaction that you were very lucky with the representatives he had in the Killaloe Municipal District and the work they did, whereas in Shannon the mood is quite different. As I say, the story on page 14 with the headline Shannon Town's future requires a rebellion. So it was expressed at the meeting. Some speakers said that they need to put forward seven Shannon Town candidates to get more for Shannon Town because they weren't happy with the view of Shannon from Clare County Council. Like, the argument is put forward that it's the biggest rates payer collectively with all the industry, but it gets one of the smallest returns in terms of investment, because as we say, it is a town but doesn't really have the town feel to it. Kind of feels like a place you pass through. That's the feeling of the residents, and the arguments being put forward was that they need to shake things up. They don't. The people elected from Cratloe and Meelick and Newmarket and 6 Mile Bridge, they were saying weren't doing anything for Shannon Town. So they referred to their current elected representatives as stooges, which was far from the rhetoric that was expressed regarding the East Clare representatives last week. But it was also said at the meeting that a €10 million gift from a Shannon-based businessman to fund the venue, which was a planned civic, social and cultural space in Shannon Town Centre, was rejected by Clare County Council. Now, the venue got funding, but not insufficient funding for it to proceed. It was put forward as a URDF funding, so that, that's something like the Vandeleur Wall Gardens benefit from that type of funding to progress it. And insufficient funds were given to the venue, so it was basically null and void, that nothing was going to happen with it. And then this businessman came within the past 2 years, as far as I know, and made the offer to Clare County Council, but that offer was refused. Clare County Council, in a statement, didn't really answer the question, first of all, and then in a subsequent statement denied the claims. So Shannon business people are saying there's definitely money was offered and architects drawing were done by the businessman, but the council are saying they didn't get the offer. So
yes.
And, according to the story, I don't know which of them there, Party, they said that the businessman went back again with a second plan and it was still rejected.
Yeah, because they initially in Shannon, people did feel, now some of the business people like Darragh O'Connor of Texcon Shannon said he had misconception. He didn't feel the venue was going to work under if it did get URDF funding, because he said viability financially and paying for it, would there have been a mortgage or whatever. He was questioning it, but he said the fact that it was gifted and there was 10 million, he said it was going to be sorted. But I remember at the time attending another very heated public meeting in Shannon. They always seem to be very heated when I go to them in Shannon. It was about the venue. It was a week or two after the venue not getting the funding, and it was in the lead up to the 2019 local election, so the councillors were getting hot under the collar as well, because they knew they were going to the ballot soon enough. But it was just a lot of anger expressed at that meeting, and the people, they just, that anger is still simmering away. It has died down a small bit, but it was also said at that meeting in 2019 that the venue, the argument put forward from some of the councillors was the venue in Shannon would be located too close to Glore in Ennis, and then the Lime Tree Theatre in Mary Immaculate College in Limerick, that it was felt what would it draw people in. But there's a very active Shannon Musical Society. I'm not sure if they're looking for men, John is. They have a very active society, and they can only hold plays and concerts and whatever when the schools are closed for their holidays. So there's a bit of an audience missing out in Shannon because of that.
Well, surely outside of Ennis, Shannon is the next biggest population in the county. And I know it's okay, it's 10-15 minutes away from Ennis, all the rest of it, but the main thing, and anyone that's involved in voluntary work or any buildings or stuff like that, is, as a man says, if you don't have a debt when you open the doors, you're sort of in business. And if you said, 10 million is a very significant sum of money, and if they had a venue that was just, would say, running costs were your costs for the year, and I think there's an initial figure was mentioned there of 250 and 250,000, and then we'll say when the second proposals went back, it looked as if that figure might have changed a bit. Now it doesn't, state exactly how much, but I would be of the opinion that if your running costs for a venue of that nature were, would say, just say for argument's sake, within the region of 150 to 200,000 a year, that's 3,000 euros a week. A little bit like no more than the facilities of the building that we're in here at the moment, or that any other club or agency does. If you build it, people will come. It would generate income, and if it needed a small subvention from the council, how bad? That would be my thoughts on it.
And what is it, Paraic? Is it just a theatre? And was
it was going to be a civic social space, so it was going to be a big facility. You would have had the theatre stuff, but it would have been a heart of the community. You could have had your public meetings and stuff. Almost similar to the facility we have here in Scariff. But it would have been, people have said Shannon is missing a heart, and that would have been seen as a heart of Shannon.
Would it be unfair to say that from the word go, when Shannon was designed as our new urban centre so many decades ago, that the design lacked a central heart? Do you know? You couldn't say where exactly is the heart of our town. And it seems to have suffered from that lack or loss. The second thing that strikes me is models for development exist. But it does mean that people, not just the politicians, but the citizenry, have to be open to the possibility of change, and become involved. This is, as I read it, it's a case of a shocking lack of communication and a lack of involvement by the citizens in their own community. Okay, and there are so many others. Do you know that so many other villages across the country, they can act as models.
Well, we often say here, John, and I mean, I'd love to know if Paraic might be able to tell us, that the councillors that we glowingly referred to last week in this area, and sometimes I'm sure they get criticised as well, but they tend to operate very much within the community. And they tend to operate at local level, that they're not just councillors, they're involved in other things at local level. And they're very much in touch, I think, with people on the ground. So that there isn't, it's just when you mentioned the word a few times, anger. I'm just wondering, would the same kind of thing not operate in the Shannon area, where councillors would be working with local groups, on an ongoing basis?
Well, just in Shannon, for argument's sake, Donna McGetkin is part of the Shannon Tidy Towns, and I know Jerry Flynn is with them from time to time, maybe not as much as Donna. Then the rest from Pat O'Gorman had been an officer in Cratloe GA Club. PJ Ryan, Pat McMahon had been in a maybe a higher capacity with the American Celtic, not a hands-on officer, but like they've all had their involvement with community groups. But I would say with regards to Shannon, they kind of see the Cratloe councillor as the Cratloe councillor, or the 6 Mile Bridge councillor as that, whereas within East Clare, they're seen as the East Clare councillors, and similarly in West Clare and North Clare. You know, Shane Talty is in Ennistimon and Lahinch, but he's viewed in Milltown Malbay as their local councillor as well.
That's very interesting what you're saying there. Very.
Yeah.
It's an isolated unit within the broader Clare group of electoral districts.
No, I mean, I just think it, like here in Scariff, where I'm from and where I know reasonably well, there is no councillor living in Scariff. No. But I don't think any of the other councillors around would be seen as, you know, he's a Killaloe councillor or he's a Fecal councillor. You know, I think what you were saying, that they would be seen as councillors for East Clare.
But and even just the fact that they said we're going to let's put forward 7 Shannon Town councillors. Yeah. Now they've had a job to get 2 elected. They wouldn't get 7. And you know, like obviously the votes in Meelick are important as well. So I don't think that was entirely thought out, but it's the anger is still there anyway in Shannon. How it's going to be resolved is another thing.
But you see, I think I'd be critical of the councillors in this area now as well. They have no problem in demanding money for every kind of a thing around in this, and they normally get it. I think the man here, Ron Kerwin, he's a journalist. He says about the only place there's regeneration is in the broadways and laneways of Venice.
No,
and he's right. They're paving they paved them all into go. Yeah. Now they have a plan now in Venice. They're going ripping up all around the square and all down around the Connell Street, and it was only paved a few years ago. So when they kind of get tired of it, they decide, well, sure, we'll regenerate it again.
But they're putting forward these kind of, it seems to be the new thing now, that it's document strategies. There's the Shannon Town Master Plan, there's the Killaloe Mobility Plan, there's 2040, as you say. But Ron put forward some very interesting points, I thought, at the meeting, and he said it's been the same ding-dong in Clare County Council because it's always been Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael. He said that needs to be changed. That's what they're saying is needed for Shannon Town to...
Well, that's very much now at the core of the way we operate here in East Clare. The party political divides don't show any evidence. They don't.
No,
not at all.
They don't.
And as proof positive, if you look at if you read the reports from the Killaloe district area, A proposes one thing and it will be backed up by B, who happens perhaps to be from a different party. They're constantly working in harmony, and that's why we as citizens like to actually acknowledge that and support it.
Okay, we better
just go back. We'll go back to this for a minute, Jim.
Yes. Okay.
The market. The market, they put up a glorified place, car park. It cost, I don't know how many million it cost.
500,000.
Yeah.
How much?
500,000.
500,000.
Yes.
But a cover for 9 or 10 cars every day. That's all that's in it. And
it's put up as a market, was it, or as a?
It was, put up as a market, but nobody uses it.
Notice on that, following on at that point, notice the actual plan, how it evolved in the Ballina Killaloe Centre. It followed on a series of consultations, and every group seems to have had an input as well as individuals.
Yes.
Lovely illustration of what we're talking about.
That's the way forward.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move along. There was something in my... Oh, yes, Shannon. Just before we leave Shannon, we're going to Malta.
There's new flights to Malta for the first time. Twice weekly service taken off in March. Very good news for Shannon. It seems to be the... Scariff Bay might fund a trip to Malta. I think Pat O'Brien is looking there. You might do local media from Malta. But it seems to be going very well. Mary Constein, so far so good as chairperson. One would question why as much progress was not made pre-COVID. Things seem to nearly be better now in Shannon than it was in 2019.
Certainly, it's looking hopeful and looking more optimistic.
Exactly.
Yeah, which is great. Okay, looking back here to East Clare, and one of the aforesaid councillors we were talking about, Pat Burke, and Pat is concerned that we're losing our wing mirrors in the hedgerows. And has he a point, Pat O'Brien?
Yeah, councillors claim overgrown hedgerows taking out vehicle wing mirrors. I think Pat was on about that before there earlier in the year, but anyway.
I think he's been photographed cutting his own hedges, I think.
Yeah.
So.
He's been photographed cutting his own hedges, and I think he lost his own wing mirror.
Yeah, I think his photograph was on the paper there with his wing mirror broken there earlier in the year. Well, they discussed it again anyway down in the Kinloon Municipal District, and Alan O'Callaghan lost his mirror as well after the oil truck, so I suppose they're hoping that maybe the hedges would be cut. I think an awful lot of farmers cut their hedges, and I know over around us now, practically a lot of farmers have had their hedges cut since the...
And do they cut them themselves, or do they...
Oh no, they get a machine to cut them,
Yeah.
But they pay for it themselves.
Oh, they pay for it themselves, yeah.
One of the things Pat has highlighted there, Pat Burke has lost a wing mirror, Alan O'Callaghan has, so maybe we should talk to Joe Cooney, Pat and Tony O'Brien, just to make sure.
But I just my thing that most farmers are getting farm payments, and maybe all the roadside hedges should be linked into the farm payments, and make them, that's part of your payments that you'd get your hedges cut, your roadside hedges cut.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay. Was it Alan O'Callaghan was talking about the dangerous dip on the way out from Ennis to East Clare?
Yes. And it is a dangerous...
Where is he talking about exactly?
Henchy's Cross.
Henchy's Cross.
Oh, yeah.
If you decide to come in the Quinn Road into Ennis,
Yes.
where you leave the main Tulla Ennis Road, turn left.
John, I'll give you the exact description, we'll say, on page 13 of the East and South East Clare notes. There's a section where, this is the quote, we'll say, from Councillor O'Callaghan. There's a section where the road is narrow with a dip and a jump. I first noticed when I saw a man in front of me with jeep and trailer. There was no speed involved. The trailer jumped to fine height into the air. And the location is just as you're coming from Clooney towards Henchy's Junction on the regional road, the R352.
Perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, but it is a danger, it really is.
It is. Well, that whole Pat O'Brien has it. Does he not have a plan? Does Pat have for that whole area to improve it?
I don't know.
The senior executive engineer, anyway, has confirmed that works on the Ennis side of Henchy's Cross aren't on the programme for next year. So
that's right.
they're going to have to be taking it easy there next year.
Yeah, they're looking for 2 million. I think we discussed it last week. And they're looking for 2 million from, I suppose, maybe from the EC, I don't know, from the government to do that whole area there.
Yes.
And it's dangerous, really. You're coming out there, it's dangerous. Yeah, there's a height above the inner side, and then at this side as well. So it's a place that really needs to be done.
Yeah.
At the meeting there, Councillor O'Callaghan did say that particularly heavy goods vehicles, trucks, lorries, they were the ones that, as he put it, were flying into the air because of the bad dip. So
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that particular stretch of the road is narrow. It's narrow compared to the rest of.
Yes.
A lot of upgrade work has happened on that road.
Yeah.
What was the hold up anyway? What was the hold up on that?
I don't know, John. I suppose they haven't the money, really.
Henchy's Cross, the reason that it didn't get it was it no longer, when it had got the green light, we'll say, whenever things had changed, and it no longer qualified for active travel funding. So that, if you recall, I think he discussed it a few months ago, you were talking about Pat Burke got very angry about the birds and the bees kind of influence and funding being given out, and he blamed it as a Green Party influence.
Yeah.
But that's been the reason that Henchy's Cross was delayed, was because it wasn't active travel funding.
Interesting.
Okay. Now, illegal dumping. We were looking at a piece there. Was it on the Clare Champion, John, where there is some illegal dumping, but because of GDPR issues, illegal dumping. I won't say it's getting the green light, but it's certainly not getting the red light.
No, and it's tied in with the resolution to this problem is tied into cameras, isn't it?
Yes.
So to our listeners, what we're saying, we're in relation to the use of CCTV, okay? Now, I'm a proponent of widespread use of cameras.
Yeah, we've had on Saturday Chronicle, John. You and I have been talking about this for a long time.
A long time.
And we would have on every bridge across the River Shannon, we would have cameras.
Absolutely.
And all over East Clare, so that anyone who comes into East Clare, like the Paraic, would be picked up loads of times since he left home this evening.
But absolutely,
I wasn't doing any illegal dumping.
No.
Yeah. I mean, what is the cause, do you think, of illegal dumping? What is it that drives people to behave like that?
Just downright laziness, John.
Do you think?
I'd say so, yeah.
So what would your...
Because I go walking and I've seen where stuff was dumped and bags of bottles. Or maybe bags of cans thrown into a drain.
Which are free to recycle anyway.
Recycle, you know?
Now, as a common man, like, what's wrong with putting a camera at A or B or C? What's the problem?
You know, if I have a camera up at home, I have a camera up at home, and it's looking out the front. But I suppose it actually stops short of covering the road.
Yeah.
But if you're out for a walk past my house, and I pick you up on the camera, I'm infringing your rights to privacy. That as far as I know. So it's my understanding that, let's say, footage picked up on a camera can't be used
GDPR
because of GDPR. I think it's gone way over the top.
Mickey is asking the question: what is that? GDPR.
It's used as a crutch in a lot of things for a lot of organisations not to do stuff. So general data protection rules. It's basically to try to protect people's identity in certain ways. But I think not to move away from the question yet, but it's privacy. Okay, and not allowing someone, if Mickey Joe, as you said, is pictured on the camera, that maybe he shouldn't be pictured on the camera, and it's to try to protect his identity in certain ways like that. But a lot of organisations, be it government or local government, would use it as a crutch. Oh, we can't give you this information because of GDPR. I'd come across it a lot of times if I was sending in a press query, normally with the hospital. Oh, we can't comment on individual cases because of GDPR. Or similar with the council, if you were to make a certain inquiry on something, they'd use GDPR, we can't comment on it because of that. But I think, like Pat said earlier on the hedge cutting and prosecutions, there's a lot of people that don't cut their hedges and aren't prosecuted on, and I think illegal dumping would be the same if it's not pushed properly in terms of prosecutions. That the money is there, like the council can send the letters, they can send hundreds or dozens of letters, and there's no action taken a lot of the time for both illegal dumping and hedge cutting.
When these fellas are caught, I know an awful lot of them don't be caught, but when they're caught, they should be named. They should be up in court and they should be named. I don't know why we're on hiding behind all these things. Look, if it's illegal, it's illegal. That's it. And if you're caught,
Okay, we're coming to the end of the programme this evening. John, I know you wanted to mention Jane Ryan's book before we finish, because we haven't time for anything else, but I know you'd be disappointed if you didn't get to that.
Indeed, because congratulations to Jane Halloran Ryan, one of our colleagues in the radio project, living in Tulla, and she has just completed a research on exploring graveyard secrets. So the book is available now in East Clare. It can go with our calendar, it's a Christmas present to your favourite neighbour. Okay, and the idea of researching graveyards appeals to me in a big way, and it has so much to offer, great possibilities, and I'm dying, as I said, I'm dying to get a read of the book.
I just hope you're not dying to get into a graveyard.
So
you'll a bit of life left in you yet.
150 slabs in the Clooney graveyard.
And that's the graveyard close to Henchy's Cross.
It is indeed, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Listen, that's all we have time for today, unfortunately. We do any bit going. We keep flying and we keep talking. But our thanks to John S. Kelly. John, thank you very much.
You're welcome, Jim.
And to Luke Fleming.
Thank you.
And to Pat O'Brien.
Thanks, Jim.
And a special thank you to our guest today, Paraic McMahon from the Clare Echo.
Thanks very much,
Paraic,
Jim.
thanks for coming out, and we always enjoy having you here.
Likewise.
Okay, now, Pat, what can you do for us to play us out?
Well, we'll go back to the
No more Garth Brooks.
we'll go back to the 60s and the sequels. I will never find another you.
Brilliant, Pat, very good. Okay, that's all from local media this week here on Scariff Bay Community Radio. We'll see you next Sunday afternoon. Goodbye and God bless.